I'm Eleanor Savage, and I am many things. I've been a producer, a curator, a troublemaker. I worked in the production world for various different arts fields and as a media artist. And now I work for a foundation that funds the arts, Jerome Foundation, here in the Twin Cities. So community for me is kind of at that intersection of arts and social justice. I've been an activist, a community organizer, and try to bring that intersection to everything that I do. And I moved to the Twin Cities in the late 80s and got involved in the queer community here, as well as the arts community, and started by kind of trying to organize the kinds of spaces that I wanted to be in that I wasn't finding outside of bar. I wanted community space, a space that would create a sense of belonging for queer people of all intersections. And so I started Vulva Riot Cabaret, which ran for over 10 years. It was a monthly cabaret for a space for people to come and perform and to gather community. It moved around a little bit, but primarily at Intermedia Arts in South Minneapolis. Yeah. Also was one of the founders of the local chapter of the Lesbian Avengers, which was a direct action group. Also organized the first Dyke March here, and also did radio with KFAI. So started out with the Women Power Authority, which was a lesbian radio show. Went from there to Fresh Fruit Radio, which is still running, and also Forbidden Fruit Radio, which was later on the airwaves so that we could do more, freedom of expression interviews. I had so many mentors, it's hard to single out any one person, but I came out of organizing through Southern, movement-based work. So was involved with Alternate Roots, which is an arts and social justice organization that came out of Highlander Center, which is where a lot of, social justice movement organizing happened. And so I brought that kind of frame of mind in when I moved here. And there were just so many incredible, different people in the arts, also outside of the arts. I think one of the most memorable was the first Dyke March. And that was organized to follow Dyke Night, which was a performance event at the Walker Art Center. And the Lesbian Avengers chapter here organized it, and it was a night march. And it was not a legal march. We didn't have permits. We just put the word out to the community. And it started, we gathered outside of the Walker and went down Lindale, took over Lindale. And it was so exhilarating because it wasn't anything anyone had ever done before. The Dykes on Bikes led the march. And we had organized something that I had seen done at the Atlanta Pride March, which is people ran for the last 2 blocks of the march. And it is so exhilarating. So all along the parade route, there were, people, all intersections of queerness were either in the march or on the sidelines of the march. Everyone was so excited and exhilarated. And when we got to 28th and Lindale, this one single cop car pulled in front of the march and just parked. And he got out, one cop, he got out of his car and he was like, stop, this is an illegal march. And the Dykes on Bikes went around him, and I was marshaling. We turned around and we said to everyone, "Run!" And the whole march ran past him and into the intersection of Lake and Lindell. And then there was a big dyke ball hosted at a venue that was there. So it's memorable to me because it was so rooted in this idea of community and social justice, and we're taking the streets. We're naming this space, claiming this space for ourselves. I think that the Lesbian Avengers formed as a way of creating visibility for lesbian identified people in the kind of GLBT space, but also because there was a lot of violence happening toward queer people, lesbians being murdered, so we formed to create chapters all over the country, to raise awareness and visibility, and also to advocate for rights. So it came out of a response to the injustices that were happening and trying to create a positive and visible space. Yeah, I think the story that I've heard, because I wasn't here for that first Pride March, is that it was a very small march. People were terrified of what would happen, and it was about a block long. But kind of like the story I shared about the first Dyke March, people were also exhilarated and excited to be together with one another, to be coming together, as a community, and kind of naming and claiming space, and it's grown exponentially in terms of the scale and what's going on. And I think one of the things that I often hear from people is that missing that kind of sense of community in a way that speaks authentically to what's going on. There's the parade, there's a lot of corporate, kind of sponsorship, a lot of politicians. But I think people talk about just missing that sense of urgency, that sense of vitality. And I've certainly experienced that myself. But does that mean we shouldn't have a pride? No. It means that, we need to be engaged and, make the space that we need that, meets us in the moment. Once again, queer trans people specifically are fodder for the political wars that are going on in this country. And, what is happening in Florida, what's happening in Texas in terms of, healthcare for our trans community members. We need to be out in front and, opposing, that kind of injustice. Also, for, BIPOC community. It's, the police assaults on our community, the impact of COVID on our communities, the impact of, the economic situation that we're in on our communities. All of these things, we just need to show up for one another and really, connect with people who are more vulnerable and try to make change where we can. I think about that sense of inclusion as belonging, and that is one of the things that I seek to do in everything, whether it's, in my immediate family, in my, beloved queer family, my social justice family, and in my work at Jerome Foundation as well. I think, we all belong, and we need to do whatever we can to create space for that and understand, like, what are the things that are preventing people from feeling like you're a part of this, you belong, you're welcome. And, you know, sometimes it's just the simplest thing. Sometimes it's just seeing somebody, hearing them, recognizing what they're saying to you, what's going on in their lives, or even asking, how are you? So I think that idea of belonging is so critical. One of my favorite queer mentors in the sphere of philanthropy, Roberto Bedoya, who's in Oakland with the Arts Council there, talks about belonging, and he was instrumental in passing a city plan that included belonging as the core. And I'm like, that is brilliant. That is just so brilliant, because you want to get behind that idea. And everybody can contribute. I think one of the biggest understandings that I had when I first arrived here was how segregated, racially segregated, the communities are. And that was the impetus behind creating the Vulva Riot Cabaret, was to create a space to create that sense of belonging. And it took time because there was not a lot of trust, but through relationship building, one of the things I did was to connect with different BIPOC or women of color organizations, and invite those organizations to be part of the Vulva Riot Cabaret, to have, it was a monthly event, so different organizations would be in charge of who was performing for a particular month, and they would also get beyond the expenses, a cut of the door, so that they could use it as a fundraising event for their organizations. And so there were many, many kind of small organizations that participated and also benefited from the event and made the event what it is. And so I think that's one of the things that I learned, one of the biggest lessons was how to work with community in a way that was collaborative, in a way that was respectful, in a way that valued relationship. And I think that it depends on like which BIPOC community, because I think it's hard to just aggregate everyone. I know we use these acronyms as a shortcut, but getting them introduced to Native American community here. One of the first things that I got involved in was going out to the boat landings around the fishing rights conflict that was going on, where the white sportsmen were, so violently attacking the Native communities for their fishing rights. And it really has been an education for me, because I didn't grow up understanding anything about Native community. And just getting introduced to like all of the communities here, the Black community here, very different from, where I grew up. And so learning about Rondo, learning about North Minneapolis, all the histories, the stories, more recently, the Hmong community, and so many immigrant communities here, the Somali community. That's I think what I love about being focused in the arts, is that it's about storytelling, and it's about connecting people to information and experiences that aren't your own, but you have this opportunity, you're invited in, something is shared with you, and it's really sacred in that way. And the arts community here in the Twin Cities is incredible. There's so many different organizations and You know, one of the oldest Black theaters in the country, Penumbra Theater, is here. You know, Theater Mu, Teatro del Pueblo, Pangea World Theater, you know, New Native Theater, like such incredible riches. So the learning journey is just ongoing and daily. I think that in terms of being accountable when you're inviting someone to tell their story, it's really important to center the storyteller and to honor what their vision is for who they want to hear the story and what their goals are with the story that they're telling, and to just be completely respectful. You know, I think stories are powerful, and stories really change people. You know, I remember Kate Bornstein, who's a transgender performer, writer. She came and performed at the Walker, and there were some members of the lesbian community who were like, I have issues with you know, transgender, and I said, just come. And one of those powerful moments that I'll never forget is one of those folks walked out after the show and said, I've changed, this changed me. And that's the power of story, is that once you understand someone else's perspective, it creates an opportunity. One of the organizations, in terms of this idea of storytelling and history and remembering our history, Telling Queer Histories organization is doing some really great work to capture, you know, and archive the work of the community, of people from all walks of our community, and, you know, not only like past but present and future as well. You know, I think Roxanne Anderson's Rare Productions organization has done so many different kinds of projects supporting early career artists of all, you know, artistic fields, and specifically BIPOC and trans identified artists and community organizers, and has been, you know, I think I first met Rox doing a sound for Pride in the park. Has just been a solid rock in the community, and is you know, doing a lot of work to try to organize a queer cultural center, queer space. You know, I think about, you know, Quatrefoil Library has been around. They now have not only like a physical library and meeting space. You know, the Queer Voices writing group meets there and has hosted events there. There's so many organizations that use that space. And now they have an online checkout, which is, you know, makes it accessible to statewide and even outside of the state. So many. And, you know, the Treader collection at the U of M, Jean Treader was instrumental in creating an archive space at this amazing archive facility at the University of Minnesota, and many, many, many people who've contributed to the queer community here have their archives there, myself included. Those are the archives for Vulva Riot, for the Lesbian Avenger work, for much of the radio work that I did with Forbidden Fruit, all there, yeah. Well, I know that everything is available, like a lot of the film projects that I worked on have been digitized, and those are available online. You know, if you're doing research and you want to like physically interact, you can make an appointment and go in there. Pride is about connection. It's about, it can be with someone I know and have known. That's one type of pride, is knowing some of the people that I've known for 20, 30 years now in this community. I mentioned Roxanne Anderson, Susan Raffo, who's also a writer and organizer. We see each other and we know each other over time, and that's a beautiful kind of experience. But I also love the other moment where it's you see someone and they know that you're gay. They're like, oh, there's a there's a Butch Dyke over there. I know, I see you, and that kind of being seen and recognition. Even though we don't know each other, we know something about each other, and I love it when you make eye contact and then there's that smile of like, I see you. It's part of that sense of belonging, and I think that whatever we can do to, just cherish those moments where we connect, where we see one another and experience one another, that's the beautiful thing. That's pride for me. I wanted to revisit the storytelling for a moment. I think that what's, true in terms of whose work is published, whose work is produced. There's huge inequity in terms of that. The inequity, for queer and trans people, for Black and brown people. And what's important to me is to really take that on and to work on, reversing that trend. And, I think that, there are stories that don't get told, haven't been told, that need to be told. And so I think that is one of the things that I try to prioritize, is really thinking about who haven't we heard from, whose voice isn't in the room, and really making room for that, making space for that, and helping facilitate that to happen. And I think whatever the intersection is, I did a lot of work in the 90s to create visibility for older people in the community, and worked with old lesbians organizing for change, and people here in this community. There's a group called GLEAM, Gay and Lesbian Elders, active in Minnesota. I did a documentary film called Voicing the Legacy, which was interviews with old lesbians. And so, whatever we can do to like see one another, lift one another up, and create that kind of space, I think is really important.